morning, I'm Maiki Oreta, and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. President Marcos and Trump strike a deal. The Philippines gets 19% tariffs, while the U.S. pays 0%. Trump slaps a 15% tariff on Japanese goods, calling it a reciprocal move. The Asian Development Bank cuts its growth forecast for developing Asia and the Pacific as headwinds build. All these and more coming up. Let's take a look at how global financial markets performed overnight. Wall Street closed mixed as investors digested a wave of earnings and watched for movement in U.S. trade talks. General Motors slid after reporting a $1 billion hit from tariffs in its quarterly results, while Tesla climbed ahead of its own report. Trade policy remains a major wild card, with President Donald Trump's self-imposed August 1 deadline for trade deals fast approaching.
The Trump administration is not going to give up on this. President Trump has been talking about tariffs, and he has a strong belief in tariffs. He's been talking about this for 30 years. The fact that he's gotten some pushback in certain areas, the fact that he hasn't reached a lot of actual hard deals so far, it's only been 90 days. In the world of trade negotiations, 90 days is nothing. They can't even agree to where to set the bargaining table in 90 days. So we've got a long way to go on this. My guess, my strongest sense is that we're going to end up with across the board tariffs that are going to be in the range overall of around 30%.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.4%. The S&P 500 added 0.1%, and the Nasdaq slipped 0.4%. Over in Europe, a mixed close. The FTSE 100 gained 0.1%. Germany's DAX fell over 1%, and France's CAC 40 lower by 0.7%. U.S. President Donald Trump slaps a 19% tariff on Philippine exports, lower than his 20% threat, but still a major trade concession from Manila. Trump announced the rate after what he called a beautiful visit by President Marcos to the White House. Under the deal, U.S. goods enter the Philippines with 0 tariffs, while Philippine exports to America now face a 19% duty.
Well, it's tough. He's a very tough negotiator. So far, we're not there because he's negotiating too tough. In fact, I used to like him better than I do now. He's too tough. But we'll probably agree to something. But he's a strong negotiator. He loves your country.
It is worthwhile to remember that it was President Trump who, in his first term, characterized the relationship between the Philippines and the United States as ironclad. And that has been necessarily the case since that time that you made that statement, sir. And it is something that the Philippines will always hold close to its heart. Thank you once again, and we are honored.
Last year, the U.S. ran a $5 billion trade deficit with the Philippines. This deal narrows that gap, but at the Philippines' expense. Washington kept its advantage, and Manila took the hit. The Asian Development Bank lowers its growth outlook for developing Asia and the Pacific, signaling that global trade tensions and U.S. tariffs are already dragging down regional momentum. The ADB warns that weaker exports, softening domestic demand, and global uncertainty are eroding growth. The region is now expected to expand 4.7% this year, a 0.2% point drop from April forecasts. Next year's outlook also slips to 4.6% as trade and geopolitical risks threaten to further disrupt supply chains and push energy costs higher. The big picture, Asia is losing some of its post-pandemic growth edge as protectionism and volatile markets redefine global trade routes. Chief economist Albert Park is urging governments to shore up domestic fundamentals and promote regional integration to stay competitive. The Marcos administration is in danger of missing several 2028 development goals, including targets for social protection, agriculture, and industry. New data from the Philippine Statistics Authority shows that less than half of the targets in these critical sectors are on track. Of 439 indicators reviewed, only 247, or 56.3%, have a medium to high chance of being met by the end of the plan. This raises questions about policy execution and resource alignment, just as the private sector looks for credible growth signals ahead of 2028. The country's commodity imports surged to $44.37 billion between 2021 and 2023, underscoring the Philippines' growing dependence on foreign goods amid global price shocks and supply risks. Data from the UN Conference on Trade and Development State of Commodity Dependence 2025 report shows that this is 88% higher than the $23.48 billion recorded nearly a decade ago. Driving that surge, food imports more than doubled, hitting $17.68 billion over the same period, exposing vulnerabilities in agriculture and raising questions on food security and trade strategy. The government service insurance system says it's business as usual despite a suspension order from the Ombudsman against its president, Wick Veloso, and several other officials. The GSIS board moved to quickly appoint Executive Vice President for Support Services, Juliet Bautista, as officer in charge to ensure continuity and stability. Bautista is a veteran CPA with over 2 decades of experience in finance and auditing. She temporarily takes over as president and general manager while operations continue uninterrupted. The board reassures members that their funds remain secure and service delivery will not be affected. Now, the Philippines is pushing hard into renewable energy, but this isn't just about going green. It's about making power more reliable, more affordable, and ready for what comes next. At the center of that push is the Green Energy Auction Program, or GAP, a market-based tool designed to fast-track clean power into the grid. But as the government rolls out more auctions, the questions are piling up. Are we moving fast enough? Are the rules working? And are consumers actually seeing the benefits? Joining us now is Pete Ilagan, president of NASACOR, the National Association of Electricity Consumers for Reforms. NASACOR is a consumer watchdog that's been at the forefront of power sector reform, working to ensure policies like GAP don't just attract investors, but deliver real gains for Filipino households and businesses. Good morning, Mr. Ilagan. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Maiki. And
Yes.
thank you for inviting me to your program.
Yeah,
and
of course.
good morning to all your viewers also.
All right, let's get to it. The Philippines has some of the most expensive power in Asia, sir. Is the Green Energy Auction Program the solution? And in that context, what is it and how might it bring power costs down?
Well, it's true that we have one of the highest rate in Asia. In fact, our generation cost alone, which plays or make up a big part of our monthly electric bill, it ranges now between 720 to 780, or average of 7 pesos and 40 centavos per kilowatt hour. Mm-hmm. Because of this high cost of power, which is a failure of the EPIRA, as we were promised by the EPIRA of lower cost of price and stable supply of electricity. We welcome the coming in of the Green Energy Auction Program because this is designed to reduce the cost of power and designed to promote the reliability of supply through competitive, transparent, and accelerated procurement of energy. So
Yeah.
we welcome the coming in of green energy as a way of providing us energy security in the country.
Yeah, very high power costs in the Philippines. Our average price is 7 pesos, and that's just the generation charge, doesn't include distribution and other add-ons. How might GAP bring this cost lower, sir?
Well, number one, right now in our generation mix, coal plays a very close. Coal fuel still makes up for a big part of our generation mix. In our installed capacity, coal is more than 50%, and with that, it makes us very vulnerable to the global oil and coal price shocks. So dito makakaiwas na tayo if we will be dependent on locally available renewable energy. So it will reduce our dependence on expensive and imported fossil fuel.
Yes, because that's one of the main reasons why power is so expensive in the Philippines. We have the high dependence on imported fuel, regulatory bottlenecks, thin competition. When you talk about the whole point of GAP, sir, the point is to bring down the cost of electricity and to provide energy security. Can you walk us through how GAP plans to do this?
Well, number one, GAP is also designed to fix the high cost of power, which was the result also of the first introduction of the renewable energy in the portfolio standards of the distribution utilities. Alam naman natin that it was the government who set the price for the first entry of the renewable energy through the feed-in tariff or fit-all charge, which we find in our monthly electric bill. So GAP is also designed to fix this high cost of power coming from the FIT program. Dito, it's the government who will do the auctioning now. The Department of Energy will set the rules, and distribution utilities will be the off-takers from the providers or the investors who will participate in the auction program.
Yeah.
The auction program will be based on their offering of the least cost, and with the ERC setting the ceiling price or the reserve price, as they would call it, and this will be the basis of the bidders. And whoever wins can have this transaction with the distribution utilities, and they will have to file their contracts with the Energy Regulatory Commission. But it will not be like what we are having now in the resolution of power supply agreement application, which are too slow and too lengthy. This kind of applications between the winners, between the winning bidder and the distribution utilities are expectedly to be done in a faster way.
That's right. We need this competitive auctioning because the lowest bid will give us the best price. We also need transparency. But how do we execute this? How do we accept the green energy program without sacrificing supply reliability and affordability, sir?
Well, in order for us to realize the reliability of this capacity coming from the renewable energy providers, well, the DOE must be really prepared on its policy direction. They must have a very clear direction for the investors. And the Energy Regulatory Commission must show its readiness in resolving applications so that there will be no delay in the delivery and implementation of the project. And then the NGCP must be smart grid. They must be able to show their capacity to absorb additional capacity so that the consumers in need of capacity will be assured that there will be no delay and this will not result to brownouts or power outages.
Yun lang, sir. Are we ready for GAP? It's a triumvirate that all needs to work together. Department of Energy, DOE, NGCP. More power will help bring prices down. But are we ready to accept this? Is the grid ready, sir?
The way we look at it right now, sadly, I could say that we are not ready at this time because of lack of a unified direction among the Department of Energy, Energy Regulatory Commission, and the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. They need to have a unified direction in order to give the right signal to the investors and in order for them to restore the public confidence in our regulatory system. They need to have that unified direction. They need close coordination. They need to be aligned with each other.
Sir, how far are we from where we are, from where we need to be on this front?
Again, sadly, we are very far from reality. DOE must review all their policies and come up with a policy that would set a unified direction, drawing the ERC and the NGCP to be aligned with their policy. And there should be a close monitoring of how these policies are implemented in order to ensure that the purpose of these policies are realized successfully.
So we heard about your asks from the DOE. You want to simplify policies and streamline the work. What do you want, sir, from the ERC and from the NGCP?
Well, it should start from the DOE. There should be clear rules on this auction program, that it will also provide penalties for any delay, because this will be an additional cost to the consumers. And there should be strict implementation of the timeliness in the delivery of the contracts or the capacities, as they are much needed in order to sustain the supply reliability and stability. There should be a close public monitoring also. This should be published and made known to the public, so that consumers can also be partners in monitoring in order to ensure the success of this program. In the ERC level, the ERC must also evaluate its policies, their current resolutions, in order to address the slowness in the resolving all the pending applications at their table for the rate reset applications, the power supply agreement applications, and the capital expenditures applications, and other applications like emergency power supply requirements. And on NGCP, the DOE must sit down really with the NGCP and discuss their power development program, or the annual transmission development program, the short, the middle, and long-term development program of the transmission system, in order for them to have that confidence that they are ready and really sincere in encouraging investors to invest in the country to make our energy supply reliable and affordable.
So you mentioned the sluggish pace of the approval of contracts. What is it now, and where would you like it to be in terms of time? How long does it take? Is it a year, and to what would you like to whittle that timeline down to?
Well, truth of the matter is that in NGCP alone, early this year, we were given the report that more than 150 are pending applications with ERC. More than 150 with NGCP alone. With the electric cooperatives, we have not yet seen a rate reset from these 121 electric cooperatives. We still have even these confusing bills. People do not understand, consumers do not understand these unbundled rates. We are confused with the monthly adjustment in the generation, transmission, and systems loss charges. We still have this unresolved refund of Meralco and the other distribution utilities. Remember, we have 141 distribution utilities, and we are using one standard methodology in rate setting. And if Meralco, the biggest player in the distribution sector, made a voluntary offer, then we are still awaiting the voluntary offer of the rest of the 140 distribution utilities, that they too may refund in order to benefit, or in order for the consumers to be given a fair treatment for having them been overcharged.
Okay.
So these are some of the problems that we have with the Energy Regulatory Commission.
So many hurdles to face. Speaking of the Energy Regulatory Commission, sir, President Marcos has just appointed new ERC chair, veteran energy lawyer Francis Juan, and 2 new commissioners. Do you see this as a positive reset for the ERC, sir?
Well, with the background of the new chairperson, who had a decade of experience as an executive director of the Energy Regulatory Commission, we expect nothing but better performance from an agency that has lost public confidence. So we expect a quick and swift implementation of all the reforms needed in order to restore public confidence in that agency. And we pray for the new chair, Attorney Juan, that he may be able to do the expectation not only of Malacanang, but of the entire consumers who have been suffering from the high cost, from the failure of the EPIRA's promise to provide low-cost electricity and reliable supply.
Lastly, sir, which specific reforms would you like the new ERC chair to tackle first?
Well, number one, it's all the pending applications, because this has a very negative effect on the investors if their money will be stuck in bureaucratic limbo. So they have to resolve all the applications immediately. Second, the full implementation of the retail competition and open access. This has been the promise of the EPIRA as the method of bringing down the cost of electricity by allowing market forces to do this effort of bringing down the cost of electricity. And we also have what are the let me just.
That's okay, sir. We're good. We're good. Thank you so much for your time. We're hoping that everything looks good, not just on paper, but in reality as well. So we can take that promise of lower electricity rates and start to feel that. Thank you for your time, sir. NASACOR President Pete Ilagan.
Thank you also so much, Maiki. Thank you.
We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back. Let's check on Asian markets this Wednesday morning. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is starkly in the green, up by 3% in early trade. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index up by 0.6%. Shanghai's Composite up by 0.4%. And Singapore's Straits Times Index exactly flat right now. Now, here at home, Philippine shares finished slightly higher yesterday, Tuesday, just hours before news broke overnight that the U.S. is imposing a 19% tariff on Philippine exports. The main gauge inched up by 0.1% to close at 63.55. Trade was thin. Just 1.1 billion shares were traded, valued at 5 billion pesos. In the near term, markets are expected to price in the tariff shock, a 19% duty that could squeeze exporters and cloud investor sentiment. Taking a look at our main gauge this morning, as of 10:27, the PSE index is in the green. I'm seeing a sea of green right now. The main gauge is higher by 0.6% to 63.97. Broader all shares index up as well, up by as much, up by 0.6%. Out of the sub-indices, all are trading in the green, with the services and mining and oil counters leading the market's rally right now, up by 1.5% for the services counter and up by 1.8% for the mining and oil counter. Volume and trading is market participation is pretty thick. We've got 1 billion shares traded, valued at 4.83 billion pesos in early trade. Market breadth is decidedly positive, with 93 advancers, 52 decliners, and 35 stocks unchanged. Taking a look at the currency markets, the peso opened stronger at 56.85 to the dollar, up from its previous close of 57.05. Now, the Trump tariff is now official, 19% on Philippine exports to the United States. Under a deal announced after President Marcos's visit to Washington, American goods will enter the Philippines with zero tariffs, while our exports now face one of the highest rates in Southeast Asia. It's being sold as a reciprocal agreement, but critics say that the power dynamic is clear. Last year, the U.S. ran a $5 billion trade deficit with the Philippines, and this new deal flips that burden back onto Filipino exporters. So did we get a fair shake? Who wins? Who loses? And what does this signal for the future of trade strategy? Joining us now is Joseph Puruganan, co-convener of the Trade Justice Filipinas Network, a coalition of farmers, workers, and advocates calling for equity in trade. He's been sounding the alarm on what he calls economic strong-arming and why this tariff deal may be a wake-up call for Philippine policymakers. Good morning, Joseph. Thanks for being here with us this morning.
Good morning, Maiki.
Joseph, let's start with your initial reaction. We were hoping for 0% tariff, but we had to settle with a 1% concession. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, Maiki, we don't have much detail right now about the deal except for what we hear from news reports. And as you said, the rate has been reduced from 20 to 19. One report that I read, for example, characterized the outcome not so much as a deal, but as a loose framework of a deal. So we feel that the devil is in the details. So far, the only confirmed information is that the U.S. auto imports will be granted zero tariffs, which is a major concern for local auto manufacturers. And aside from that, we're also hearing from reports, President Marcos himself said that, we expect increased importation from the United States for soy products, wheat products, and medicine. But no specific details yet.
Yeah.
And
the details are not firm. All we have is that 19% figure. And, it begs the question, what did that 1% come at the cost of? Right? As you said, the devil is in the details. Just taking a look at it, from the information that we have now, does this feel like a fair shake to you?
Not at all. I mean, again, going by what Trump was saying on social media, that there's going to be a wider impact in the Philippines would remove duties on U.S. goods, and the two countries would cooperate militarily. So Trump is claiming that this is open market for the Philippines, no? So in return for a mere 1% reduction from the 20%, the real question is, what did we give up, in order to get this measly concession? I think that is the main concern.
Yeah, interesting how you put it. What did we give up in exchange for this measly, as you said, concession? What do you think are going to be the effects on this? What does this tell you about where we are now and where we're headed, Joseph?
So, for example, as I said, auto industry is a big concern. So the local auto industry, especially we're dealing here with assemblers like Toyota and Mitsubishi, they're already struggling to compete with cheaper imports. And the entry of US-made vehicles at zero will only make things worse. US brands benefit from scale, subsidies, incentives, and all of that. So even local auto parts, that's the other component of the industry, many of which are small and medium enterprises, we feel will feel the blow as demand from assemblers drop. This threatens the entire automotive value chain, having impact on jobs, livelihood, and domestic production. And could also trigger, worst case scenario, plant closures, layoffs, and a sharp decline in value-added manufacturing, directly undermining, in fact, a government-owned program of comprehensive automobile resurgence strategy.
When do you expect to start feeling the effects on the Philippine economy, Joseph?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as I said, this is just one sector. We don't know the details yet, and I think that is the demand should be for the government to disclose what has been entered into, what was given up, because we feel that this would have an impact on our economy for sure.
What does this say about us structurally, and what needs to change moving forward?
Yeah, for many years, Maiki, the trade strategy has always been to push for free trade agreements, as a way to gain market access, supposedly, for Philippine exports, and at the same time attract foreign investments into the country. That strategy is premised on the belief, which we have challenged all along, that these FTAs matter and that they are equal partnership agreements. Now, clearly, with the unilateral actions by Trump, we can say that they don't matter. And now that they're I think, useless, So the effect is clear. the stronger partner sets the rules and the weaker partner follows. It would have deep implications on our strategic development objectives, rebuilding our manufacturing sector, pursuing industrial policy, strengthening our agriculture. This will also further deepen our dependence on imports, and it makes it more convenient for us to import, just import and say cars or auto parts instead of trying to boost local manufacturing. So this would have, again, as I said, repercussions on jobs, wages, etc.
Yeah,
As we stated in our statement earlier, this should be viewed as a wake-up call to change course on trade policy.
absolutely. The external environment is indeed shifting, and we need to recalibrate. It's a call to strengthen our own domestic industries. What do we need from the government in order to really strengthen our domestic industries to this effect?
Well, I think we've been calling for support for domestic industries, particularly for small and medium enterprises. We feel that as far as the rethinking of trade is concerned, what we've been pushing for is deeper regional solidarity within ASEAN, no? Not just as a geopolitical bloc, but as a more cohesive economic community. We must also broaden and rebalance our trade relationships, especially with nations that respect sovereign development paths and not use trade as a political cudgel. And most of all, we must shift towards an economic strategy, as we said, centered on meeting the needs of our own people, reviving agriculture, supporting domestic industries, ensuring food, energy, and wage security from within.
Yeah, suma total, the one that's going to pay for this tariff is the consumer. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on this, Joseph?
Yeah, tariffs are, as you know, Mikey, taxes, right? And most often these are passed on to the consumers. So the consumers would be made to pay higher costs for products. But tariffs are also a tool, and we, as trade justice advocates, we have always adhered to that, if used properly to protect local producers. So when we reduce our tariffs against U.S. imports, it would mean cheaper imported products coming in. It might be good for consumers, but bad for local producers and manufacturers, and bad for farmers, workers, who stand to lose livelihood and jobs in the wake of the entry of cheaper imports.
And Joseph, lastly, what's your final message to civil society, to policymakers, to businessmen on what we need to do to break out of this pattern of dependency and to reclaim our trade sovereignty?
Well, first message to the Marcos administration, I think it is incumbent upon the government to explain what or to provide more details about this. And we're actually not sure whether the executive has the authority to do that, no, because Congress has the authority on taxes and tariffs, no. But a broader message to civil society, I mean, trade is far too important to be left in the hands of politicians or their technocrats. We must all be engaged and remain vigilant because no one else will defend our interests but us. So if we leave it to them, we risk paying the price with our jobs, industries, and our future.
Yeah, no one will protect our interests but us. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Joseph Puruganan.
Thank you, Mikey.
Now, the new U.S. tariff was just announced, and it could hit Philippine exports hard. Economists say that the fallout may be far greater than expected, triggering a domino effect that could strain jobs, slow growth, and weaken the peso. Sujin Kim has the details.
While President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is in Washington for his bilateral meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, economists have begun to raise alarms over the potential impact of the U.S. imposed 20% tariff on Philippine exports.
The likely effect will be a minus 0.5 to 1%, minus 1% to GDP.
With fiscal space tightening and tariff pressures mounting, experts reassess the economic strategy under the Marcos administration. Dr. Victor Abola of the University of Asia and the Pacific stresses that exports are not the economy's primary driver of growth.
So it's really domestic demand that is driving the economy.
But Abola warns that if exports slump further due to higher tariffs, growth could be indirectly affected. A bigger threat, he says, is the possible diversion of Chinese products away from the U.S. and into the Philippines.
This is the bigger worry. The imports from China will grow because they cannot enter the U.S. So if we import more, our deficits will be larger, our trade deficits will be larger. And that means slower GDP growth and unemployment.
With inflation now on a downward trend, Abola calls for an urgent shift in monetary policy by the Bangko Sentral. He forecasts 2025 inflation to hit just 1.6%, well below the BSP's 2 to 4% target. His recommendation, slash the policy rate from 5.25% to 3% to stimulate spending and investments. Abola also urges the BSP to boost the country's gross international reserves, not through borrowing, but by buying dollars directly. His warning, if the strong peso policy is maintained, the trade deficit will widen, and jobs that could have been created locally may end up moving abroad. Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
The Supreme Court clears the way for a massive 131-hectare reclamation project in Mandaue City in Cebu, backed by businessman and former lawmaker Maiki Oreta. The ruling affirms the legality of a 2014 joint venture between Romero's group and the city government. The mixed-use development will rise along the Mactan Channel, transforming barangays Bacnaan and Umapad on the northern edge of Cebu City. Plans include residential, commercial, industrial, and tourism zones, all designed to drive long-term economic growth in the fast-growing Cebu metropolitan area. The project first broke ground in 2016, but faced years of delays due to environmental and regulatory issues. We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Quezon City, the municipality of Calumpit in Bulacan, and the entire province of Cavite are under state of calamity due to flooding caused by heavy monsoon rains. Meanwhile, the impact of severe tropical storm Crising continues to grow, with economic damage now crossing the 4 billion peso mark. In a fresh update from the presidential office this morning, Crising has dealt over 4 billion pesos in infrastructure damage, threatening supply chains, transport links, and local investments. The storm also wiped out over 134 million pesos in crops and farm assets, hitting agricultural-reliant regions hard and raising concerns over food supply and inflation. Nearly 490,000 families have been affected, with 6 confirmed dead, 5 injured, and 8 still missing. The main cause of the fatalities, massive flooding across more than 1,800 areas. The recent flooding caused by Crising has many Filipinos asking, why does Metro Manila keep flooding? Veteran urban planner Felino Palafox offered a straightforward answer on BNC's agenda, decades of inaction.
After Ondoy, I was in Dubai, tinawagan ako ni Darius Bondok. Some people were blaming God for the floods. And I said, it's not an act of God, but sin of omission and of men and women running our country. Because the solutions are there, hindi pa natutupad.
Palafox says that since the 1970s, successive governments have failed to implement most major flood control plans, despite early warnings that the infrastructure damage we're seeing today would happen. And why the delay? He claims prevention isn't as profitable as rehabilitation, and a harsh reality that continues to put lives, property, and investments at risk.
Mayor Magalong of Baguio said on record, corruption and infrastructure is as high as 70%. And I asked, how come walang pork barrel sa prevention? And sinagot sa akin, Palafox, you were not born yesterday. State of calamity, wala nang bidding-bidding. Mas malaking kikitain sa rehabilitation.
Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla sparks public outrage after making light of a weather-related work and class suspension. For many business leaders, the incident raises deeper questions about government communication and crisis management. In a post on the DILG's official Facebook page, Remulla joked that he ate a good meal, then took a nap before making his announcement. The post promptly drew fierce backlash from the public. Actress Jessie Mendiola asked, "Is this supposed to be funny?" Another user wrote, "Call me OA, but people are suffering and yet others act like everything's just fine. I hope we can be more mindful with our choice of words." One comment struck a chord with the business community. "Sir, public service requires professionalism, compassion, and timely communication, especially during crises." On another front, S&P Global Ratings boosts Meralco's outlook to positive while maintaining its BBB credit rating. The upgrade reflects growing confidence in the company's expansion into power generation and its strategic shift from a pure distributor to a fully diversified energy utility. S&P cites solid cash flows from Meralco's core distribution business, which supplies most of Luzon's electricity, now bolstered by its recently renewed 25-year franchise. As the country's largest electricity distributor, Meralco currently serves around 8 million customers across more than 100 cities and municipalities. We're going to be taking a quick break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump announces a trade agreement with Japan, where Tokyo will pay a 15% reciprocal tariff on goods exported to the United States. As part of the deal, Japan is also set to invest $550 billion into the U.S. economy. Trump claimed that the U.S. will receive 90% of the profits, though he did not explain how that would be measured or implemented. In early July, Trump had threatened a 30% tariff on Japanese exports starting August 1st in a letter to Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. Japan is currently the U.S.'s fifth largest source of imports. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump takes a swing at the predecessor of President Bongbong Marcos, criticizing his pro-China stance and decision to distance the Philippines from the United States. Trump didn't name names, but said that the administration before Marcos didn't know what they were doing. That was widely interpreted as a jab at former President Rodrigo Duterte, who forged strong ties with Chinese President Xi Jinping throughout his term.
We're going to have a very good relationship. I mean, I know you had some problems with another president, and it was not your fault. It was the president's fault, and the country was maybe tilting toward China, but we untilted it very, very quickly. But you know, you had a country that was tilting toward China for a period of time, and I just don't think that would have been good for you. You can deal with China, you should deal with China, but when I got elected, everything changed, and they came right back to us.
All of what we consider part of the modernization of the Philippine military is really as a response to the circumstances that surround the situation around the South China Sea, and now what we used to refer to as Asia Pacific.
President Donald Trump pulls the United States out of UNESCO, citing the agency's globalist stance and what he calls divisive anti-U.S. policies. The U.S. State Department says that the move is consistent with Trump's America First foreign policy. It accuses UNESCO of promoting an ideological agenda at odds with U.S. interests, including the decision to admit Palestine as a member state, which Washington calls a violation of U.S. policy. The U.S. also claims that UNESCO's actions have helped fuel anti-Israel rhetoric globally.
Continued involvement in UNESCO is not in the national interest of the United States. UNESCO works to advance divisive social and cultural causes and maintains an outsized focus on the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, a globalist ideological agenda for international development at odds with our America First foreign policy.
Before we go, Black Sabbath frontman and reality TV star Ozzy Osbourne has passed away. He was 76. This came just weeks after Osbourne performed with Black Sabbath in his hometown of Birmingham, England, earlier this month. The one-off gig united the band's original lineup for the first time in 20 years, with proceeds going to charity. His passing was announced by his family, which was followed by tributes and messages of support from fans and other metal legends. Osbourne was respected by the rock music industry and considered the godfather of heavy metal. And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.